The year was 1865. The Civil War had just ended, and the Industrial Revolution was slowly reclining, leaving the aftermath to affect the fates of millions of American lives. The rich got richer, and the poor, resorting to living in the poor conditions of the tenements or even among the streets, could only get poorer. And this New York City is where our story takes place. Mary Ellen Wilson was given to the Department of Charities in 1864. A few years later, in 1866, a young couple came and adopted the 2-year-old baby girl, claiming to be family. These two were Thomas and Mary McCormack. The department handed over the child with no requirement of birth certificate or actual documentation of parenthood. Suddenly, Thomas McCormack, the one who initially wanted to adopt the orphan girl, passed away, and the wife remarried. The family moved to a tenement on West 31st Street, where Mary Ellen's abuse took place. Due from stress and how much she was overworked each day, her adoptive mother would cut, whip, and burn Mary Ellen on a daily basis. The neighbors never saw her, though they did hear her scream. For 7 years, Mary Ellen was abused within her home, until one day she was rescued. Etta Angel Wheeler was a Methodist missionary worker. She heard about Mary Ellen from various people living in the tenements and was looking for where to find her in hopes of rescuing the poor child. However, when the McConnellys didn't answer their door, she went to their neighbor, Margaret Bingham, an old German woman who was ill and also concerned with the child. Margaret requested that Etta please check up on the child to make sure it was all right, and Etta agreed. She came upon Mary Ellen's tenement on a winter morning of 1873. That was when she saw Mary Ellen. She was a tiny mite, the size of 5 years, though, as afterward appeared, she was then 9. From a pan set upon a low stool, she stood washing dishes, struggling with a frying pan about as heavy as herself. Across the table lay a brutal whip of twisted leather strands, and the child's meager arms and legs bore many marks of its use. But the saddest part of her story was written on her face. This look of suppression and misery, the face of a child unloved, of a child who had only seen the fearsome side of life. These things I saw while seeming not to see, and I left without speaking to or of the child. Etta Wheeler immediately took action. She searched for anyone who was willing to help her. She sought help from the police and government authorities, but they refused to intervene with the situation. Then she searched for laws protecting children, but there were only a few and not even enforced at all. Finally, she got to her last resort. I had more than once been tempted to apply to the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, but had lacked the courage to do what seemed absurd. However, on the following Tuesday, a niece said, "You are so troubled over that abused child, why not go to Mr. Berg? She is a little animal, surely." I said at once, "I will go." Within an hour, I was at the Society's rooms. Henry Berg was a famous figure in New York at that time, well known for his kind, often criticized as too kind, deeds to stop the abuse and mistreatment of animals. These deeds ranged from arresting owners for mistreating their animals to inventing contraptions to help animals have a better lifestyle. Not only that, but he was the founder for the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Etta Wheeler came to him one morning, pleading to him to take the case and to look more into protecting Mary Ellen. His reply to Etta Wheeler's plea was hesitant, as humans, let alone children, were not in his expertise to protect. However, he replied to her, "This case interests me much, but a very definite testimony is needed to warrant interference between the child and those claiming guardianship. Will you not send me a written statement that, at my leisure, I may judge the weight of the evidence and may also have time to consider if this society should interfere?" I promised to consider the case carefully. Etta Wheeler got the documentations and the witnesses immediately, and then the real rescue of Mary Ellen Wilson started. After we had waited a short time in the judge's court, 2 officers came in, one of whom had the little girl in his arms. She was wrapped in a carriage blanket and was without other clothing than the 2 ragged garments I had seen in the months before. Her body was bruised, her face disfigured, and the woman, as if to make testimony sure against herself, had the day before struck the child with a pair of shears, cutting a gash through the left eyebrow and down the cheek, fortunately escaping the eye.
Mama has been in the habit of whipping and beating me almost every day. She used to whip me with a twisted whip, a raw hide. The whip always left black and blue marks on my body. I now have the black and blue marks on my head, which were made by Mama, and also a cut on the side of my head on my forehead, which was made by a pair of scissors. She struck me with those scissors and cut me. I have no recollection of ever being kissed by anyone. Have never been kissed by Mama. I've never been taken in Mama's lap or caressed or petted. I never dared to speak to anybody because if I did, I would get whipped. I did not know for what I was whipped. Mama never said anything to me when she whipped me. I do not want to go live back with Mama because she beats me so.
At the end of the trial, it was decided that Mary Ellen was to be removed from the McConnellys immediately, and Mary McConnelly, her mother, would be held for more trials in the future to decide her fate. But in terms of Mary Ellen's case, her story was publicized through the whole state. Jacob Riis, famous photographer and journalist at the time who attended the court hearing, even wrote, "I was in a courtroom full of men with pale, stern looks. I saw a child brought in, at the sight of which men wept aloud. And as I looked, I knew I was where the first chapter of children's rights was written. For from that dingy courtroom came forth the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, with all it has meant to the world's life." For weeks at a time, Mary Ellen's name was in the headlines of every running newspaper in New York. Her case became famous, and immediately heartfelt offers of adoption came by the dozens. Not only did adoption offers come in response to Mary Ellen's case, there was also another thing: societies. People were outraged and horrified by the mistreatment of a little girl, and they started to form societies and organizations to prevent such events in the future. By 1922, 58 societies were formed, all in the interest of protecting children, and 307 other humane societies were founded. Finally, laws and mandates regarding child protection and care were passed in every state in the U.S., and many of these societies were shut down. As for Mary Ellen, she eventually lived with Etta Wheeler's sister, and thus she started a new life of her own. At age 24, she married, raised a family with 3 daughters, and died at peace in 1956 at the age of 92. Now there are official organizations across the U.S. concerning child abuse and mistreatment. An example is the American Humane Association, founded in 1877 and made to protect both children and animals from cruelty, abuse, neglect, and exploitation. At the time of Mary Ellen's case, during America's Industrial Revolution, morals and values were often lost when money and food came into view. However, this case unshrouded the eyes of all, exposing them to the horrors such as Mary Ellen's case and that they must be stopped. It reawakened moral and ethics once more in America, even if only slightly for some and more for others. Her case was a turning point in history where the importance of good-natured treatment to children came to view, changing America forever.